Hey everybody, it is Cinnamon Cooney, your Art Sherpa, and today I want to show you how to paint Forget-Me-Nots because I hope you haven't forgotten me. I haven't been teaching online in a second. This is a step-by-step acrylic lesson. I'm going to break everything down, every tool, every color mix, every process that I do this. If you're not into drawing, of course I provide a free traceable. Generally 7 to 10 days after a video is released, there is a written out matching instruction set called a mini book that you can download for free if you have an account on our website, which is also free. On the mic is my husband, John.
Hello.
He's going to make sure that of our new traveling setup that the cameras are pointing at what I am doing. We're hopefully going to be getting more of these together for you. So I'm going to remind you at the end, but at the beginning, I'm say, hey, if you haven't subscribed in a while, make sure you've got that subscription. Make sure you've rung that bell because these are just going to be so much fun. You're going to be like, I want to paint everything. Everything. So there's really nothing for you to do but get your paint, get your brushes, and come back because I missed you so much and I want to paint with you. Step one is a fun step because it's a super easy step. We're going to take a big brush. Now, in this case, I'm using a number 30 Simply Simmons extra firm flat. It's really actually almost a break because the length out is so short, but you know, brush makers name things willy-nilly. But you'll like this. You could use any brush you have that you like to do big painting. I'm going to come in and get the brush damp. You can see me dipping this in and dragging off a little extra water because it's not a watercolor. I'm going to come to my green and brown, my phthalo green and my burnt sienna. And I'm going to mix them together, and you're going to see that deepens the green, right? And I'm loading the brush on both sides, and I'm going to just paint this whole thing, this dark color first. Isn't that easy, John?
Super easy.
Super easy. Listen, guys, if you are one of our regular art family community members, and you have been like, man, it's like you've been off air forever, and I missed you. We missed you back.
Yes, this was almost just like, let's just go record it, something, anything,
You just
anything.
miss
Just make a
everybody
video.
so much. So that's why we're painting Forget-Me-Nots today. So if you're familiar with the channel, you probably had an instant chuckle. You're like, oh, she's so silly. If you're brand new, I just want to welcome you. We have just the nicest art community in the world. Not only are you going to find that you have very supporting art lessons where we get to start by painting an entire canvas of dark green. Notice that I'm loading and mixing as I go. But that you have people who have been where you are today on your art journey who will also be encouraging in all of our community spaces. So that's one thing I really like about what we do here is that it's just such a great place to be a new painter or a returning painter. That's just my opinion.
So there's a great question here in the comments. How come you have some brown muddled stuff and it's not evenly one color? Is that okay?
It's totally okay.
Is that normally?
I'm making a face at John because normally we're live and he's pretending there are comments because he's been here a minute and he knows there's questions.
I know this question is going to come up.
And it's going to be asked in the premiere because we'll do this as a premiere so you guys can have that community experience on these. But no, John is absolutely correct. And you might wonder that as a new painter. And I love that you always have that voice. This first layer does not have to be even. It can be very streaky. You do want all the white of the canvas covered. But because we have such a diffused background, this kind of loosey-goosey, free-spirited style of painting, that's really just no problem at all. Now, for the next layer, I do want my surface to be dry. You can air dry it and just allow it to dry over time. That can take acrylic anywhere from, depending on where you live, 3 to 20 minutes, right? Like Arizona, your canvas may already be dry. I don't know.
Right.
It can be pretty dry there, pretty fast. But depending on where you live, it can take just a short amount of time, or you can just accelerate that with a hair dryer. Just remember, don't put that on its highest setting, especially if you're using a heat gun. You want the air to just sort of dry it for you. When we come back, we'll show you what the next step is. So we have this background in, and the reason we like to put this in when we're doing one of these very diffused green backgrounds is sometimes greens are very transparent colors. So this allows to create visual depth that helps our paintings feel a little more finished. Now, I'm going to be using a 1 inch Princeton brush. This is an oval mop and a synthetic filament. And then I'm going to be using, this particular one is a number 20 Raphael Artini hog bristle brush. The idea, though, is to have a brush that puts out the paint that's kind of stiff and firm, and then a soft one to blend it. And that's sort of how we're going to get this technique in. Excited to see this come in, babe?
Yeah.
I
This is
am
going to
too.
look cool.
Huh?
I think this will be neat.
It's going to be neat. So first I'm going to get my hog brush a little bit wet in the cup, and I'm going to add some yellow to the brush, really kind of heavy load it with the yellow, as you can see. Then I'll come over and get a bit of my pre-mixed green, because if you remember, we did the phthalo green and burnt sienna. And I'm going to come in here and start to very lightly and with irregular brush strokes. Notice how I'm sometimes coming to an angle or down or right, and I am trying to diffuse to the eye or make soft these lighter values because it's not in focus. And that lack of focus, that's the atmospheric perspective. I'm going to get a little water on my brush again. That's the atmospheric perspective that lets us perceive these distant colors as being part of our subject, but just not close to us, not where we're focusing our attention. I'm not pressing very hard on the brush. This is a very light pressure. Now, if any of this is feeling challenging, right, which is okay, because if you're new to painting, it might feel challenging. We have a whole free course for beginning painting to help these techniques and concepts just seem, I don't know, just a little more beginner friendly.
You've done a couple beginner courses.
I have. And it's okay to, be in that space. I'm grabbing a darker color. If you'll notice here, I'm grabbing my burnt sienna and my phthalo green. Let's come in and add another sort of deep value here. It creates some nice depth, doesn't it?
I like all the different tones.
I do as well. You can come back through. And this is just sort of how we work this space, right? Creating these different tones, these different depths. We're really talking about leaves and light, but far away leaves and far away light. And get a little more phthalo green on my brush. That's what I did there. Got a little more phthalo green. I haven't really rinsed these colors out. I haven't even needed to use the blender done. And the reason I haven't is because the colors are so transparent.
Ah. They sort of self-blend.
They kind of do, don't they? This is just what phthalo green is like. It's kind of its personality. Every pigment has a personality. And honestly, across every paint line, every pigment has a personality. So if you use a different brand of burnt sienna than I'm using, it might be a little redder or deeper. It might be a little more transparent. Little changes. Nothing huge. Over time, notice that I've added yellow through here and I'm sort of lightening this up.
Yeah.
Over time, you might find that you have preferences.
And you will. People will have preferences.
And it's okay to have preferences. It's okay to say, I like this phthalo green from this company just a little bit better. That was a little bit wet, so I came back and offloaded a little water from my brush. I'm going to add some white here. Notice that kind of created a softer green through here. Maybe even in the middle here. Wipe off on my paper towel between my canvas and my palette. It lets me take off a little extra paint when I want to offload a little extra paint, because sometimes I do. I'll wipe my brush and
sometimes you do.
Sometimes you don't. So Kit Kat. Was that what it? Sometimes you feel like a.
I think that's like a Mounds. And
that's right, almonds.
Almond Joy.
I never feel like a Mounds. That's why I don't remember.
Because it's coconut, right?
I never feel like it. Sometimes you feel like a Mounds.
80s.
Sometimes you don't. I'm like, always don't. I'm adding a little bit of the yellow green there, and you can see I'm just trying to get some Now, in a surprise area, I'm going to rinse off here just a bit.
All right.
Really kind of try to get my brush a little bit clean. Okay, wipe out the water. We're going to do something fun.
What's that?
We're going to get a little blue. Not too much water in the brush. A little bit blue. Smidge of white. This is the ultramarine blue, not the phthalo blue.
Oh. It's funny how it the sheen on it changes as it dries.
The sheen on it and the color will deepen. We call that color shift in acrylic paint.
Oh, that shifty color.
Yeah, and most paints have some type of color shift, like watercolors lighten, acrylic paints can deepen. And so you kind of have to account for that. I'm going to bring some of this little color up here towards the top. And then we're gonna do something fun. We're gonna get some more magenta in there. And look at that purple. That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
A little of that purple. Got some of that purple down here too. Maybe into that blue area. So that's what we're doing is we're saying, oh, hey guys, there might be some distant flowers. Just they're out of focus though. They're far away. I turn my brush. And I haven't even had to really get my mop in here, but I can come in with a mop and even soften this. See how that softens those
I do.
lines a little bit?
It blends them a little bit.
Just a little bit. You don't have to do that, but it can be nice if you want them even softer than what the hog brush might be giving you.
Oh.
It's just important. You can see it's just a dusting, but it is a good idea to rinse these out and not let this paint dry on this brush. If I want to, I can come back with the brush and a little bit of the light paint and softly integrate that as well. A little bit wetter than dry. Too much yellow. But look what I do. I just come back and I'm like, oh no. Blend back, my friend. Blend back. See, so you can use both of those brushes to get some different effects. All very soft. Even into the deep colors. See how they're similar but very different from each other?
Yeah.
You don't always have to have both. Not required. I feel like we've just created a really beautiful background just sort of on its own.
Oh, it really is.
I really like that. Now rinse your brushes out very well, right? You're going to still do a good wash at the end, but you don't want to leave paint on your brushes even as you're working on a project because the acrylic paint can dry and that shortens the life of your brush. Okay, so this is a step which we did together. We're going to want to dry before we do the next step. So when we come back, I'm going to show you what's next, but make sure your canvas is dry before we begin. So we have this wonderful focal floral that we're doing of forget-me-nots so that you guys forget me not.
Don't forget.
Don't forget. Don't forget we love to paint together. Don't forget you can do this. I am going to be using a powerhouse in this particular part of the technique, the filbert. Filbert is a rounded brush. It's like a flat that's rounded at the end. It means cat's tongue in French. I had a cat's tongue brush that was pointed. It was a pointed cat's tongue.
Yep.
Because we like to confuse everybody. So I've got a couple here that I like very much. This is a number 8 Simply Simmons, and I have a number 4 Isabey Isacryl. So these are both great brushes, but what you're looking for is kind of a variety of sizes in this shape of brush if you can. I also have a round out for maybe stems or details if I need it during the next few steps. And I've still got my blender nearby just in case I have to blend. And then I have my other favorite blender nearby, which is my Princeton Select Round Blender. And I don't know where in these I might need this painting. I kind of, as I go, I'll be like, oh, I need this or I need that. And I'll show you and make sure I announce it and talk to you about it and why as it's happening. But let's begin with the smaller filbert, the number 4 Isabey. So I'm going to actually get into my phthalo blue and mix it into my ultramarine blue. Kind of making a half-half blue. Adding white to it. I'm going to come here in this upper left corner. Make a curved brush stroke. Counter curve. And what I'm not going to be doing is making too hard of a line or crisp of a line. And the reason I'm going to keep this sort of soft, as you can see I'm not pressing very hard, is while these flowers up front will be very much in focus, these are still, I'm going to curve on the edge, so I'm on the edge of the brush. These are still very out of focus. And I think that that's sort of fun. That's when I'm going to have sort of a shortened petal that comes towards me. And you'll notice that I'm not really making those sharp edges. They're still diffused. Ultramarine blue, phthalo blue. Maybe over here. It's make a soft little petal shape over on our more right-hand side. And by almost dry brushing and not putting in a lot of pigment and not making hard lines, that is allowing this flower to feel just a little less focused, which we don't mind. And even here, I might come in and put some of that in, a little less focused. The layering is fun, isn't it? Where we think about these things, but we create layers. And you'll notice there's a little curve to my brush strokes. John's making sure you guys really get to see that. These sort of help delineate the motion of the petals. And you can see the filbert helps me create that petal shape sort of easily. It's not cheating. It's just knowing the tools and what the tools are great at. So my paint load is light. My water load is light. My focus is not too bright. We're going to go like this a little bit. I'm going to rinse out my brush. I'm going to take a little bit of my white, a smidge of my yellow. I don't want it to be wet, so I'm going to make sure I don't have excess water on my brush. I'm going to just lightly brush in what could be a little center flower. Gosh, it's so light. Again here, kind of brushing in, dry brush. So very light pressure, right? Lots of the canvas showing through. So it's just it's a kiss of something. You're going to kiss the canvas with color. Sometimes we have to kiss our canvases with color. I come up here and maybe put some of this, maybe a little more yellow. Notice I dipped in a little more yellow. Here's a trick. I'll go right into my purple, but with my yellow, and that will desaturate it. When you desaturate a color, it makes it feel out of focus or further away. I like to do that in landscapes. But maybe I'll put a little of the brighter purple there. Come into my blue again. A little more purple down here, perhaps. See, I'm being very playful.
That is very playful.
Got to be a little bit playful. All right. I feel like that's some distant little, ooh, closer to us, a little more in focus, but not so focused. Now, for the next step, you don't have to worry too much if it's dry or not dry, because we're not going to be picking up large amounts of yellow into our blue paint, graying it out. When we come back, I'm going to show you the next step. You're going to love it. So we're going to continue on a little bit like what we were doing, but our loads will get a little heavier and our lines will get a little crisper. I'm going to continue on with this number 4. I'm going to take my ultramarine blue and mix it into my phthalo blue. And I'm going to add a nice amount of white to it. Give me my first base of my forget-me-not color. dip my brush in water to make sure I have nice flow off the paint. You can see it's just a little creamier. And come right here and paint in a little petal. Press and curl in. Oh, that's that petal shape. That's got a little friend next to it. Maybe a little bit of a point, and then come back in. So see, just kind of a more solid flower. Paint's a little more solid. I'm going to give this petal a little personality. Kind of some weird shape to it. The important thing to think about these is that they're star flowers. So there's 5 petals for the most part on all the flowers. This one is maybe a little bit closer, so I'll give it a line and then press out and press out. And then we're going to add a little bit of maybe a little curl in there, a little curl in there. So this is just sort of the shape of this overall flower, and we have a nice blue there. We're not painting individuated flower petals yet. We're painting the overall shape of the flower. When we come back with different values and darkness and lights is when we're going to start to see maybe how the individual petals relate to each other. Press one here. That's nice. And this one maybe kind of comes in. Nice little version there. And where we put the centers is sort of like where the face of the flower is, and we don't see that yet, right? Like if I put the center of the flower here, that really changes its face, doesn't it? The way it's facing. And so that's just something that I'm going to be thinking of quite a lot. Put another little big one right here. This one will curl in, but we won't see that curl until I add the shadows and the highlights. So this one has a nice little petal coming out this way. Let's add a little white to it. So this bit is a longer kind of like weird little bit that we do as we're painting the flowers. And I'm kind of foreshortening this petal. I know that's going to be foreshortened. But right now, I've just got to get that outside shape. It's a different way of doing it. So when you one stroke or you do a singular stroke flower, it's a technique-based flower. And the load of the brush creates the petals and their layering and everything. When you do like this, you're just painting the value and hue and color and form. And the flowers sort of develop through the process of the painting.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, I like that very, very much. All right, now over here, I'm going to get a little more purple going. What? I know, it's so exciting. Maybe a little more ultramarine into it. A little bit of a petal that way. Sometimes these have a little bit of that purple to them, especially when they're budding or newly opened. So it's nice to be able to include that into their shape. Maybe a little more magenta and a little more ultramarine blue. If I want it to be a deeper purple, I'm going to go more ultramarine blue. If I want it to be more magenta, I'm going to take it more into the magenta. I'm going to add a bit of this through here, kind of around this petal. See how we're feeling sort of around it? Again, because we're just sort of painting the overall form. And wipe this off on my paper towel. I don't even really need to rinse it out so much, because I can go right back into my 2 blues. Get my brush a little bit wet. Not even needing my bigger filbert.
Yeah.
Which is always nice when I don't need a bigger brush. Now I will kind of pull in this downward petal that layers over the top of that. This one's going to be more facing me. Kind of a fun way to paint all this. Maybe a little kind of one here. You know, and then sometimes they will touch, right? Because they're layered. Throw some pink on there just to be a rebel. Oh, that's nice. Just filling it in. Oh, a little more blue on that than I want. Just come in with my white. I don't mind.
You just paint right over the top of that.
Yeah, I'm just putting them in where they're layering in. I know I will curl some of the petals by adding highlights to them. I'll change the centers in the faces by where I put the yellow and white in. Just kind of a fun little deal. But look at them. They're blurby at this stage. They're blurby shapes.
They're still in development.
Yeah, if you feel like, oh, these are blurby, they're blurby. It's okay that your flowers have a blurby moment. They'll come together, don't worry. Everything works out in the end. If it isn't working out, it's not the end of the painting. This one definitely is a foreshortened petal. That's a weird shaped petal, but once you put the highlights and shadows on it, you'll be like, oh, that's what it was doing. That's how it was facing. And that's what we've really got to kind of just embrace. Like, flowers they face towards us, they face away from us. Sometimes they're shy.
They can just randomly be out there.
I'm shy. So shy. Right?
Yeah.
A little fellow right there. Kind of over our out of focus flower. Putting that in there. Oh, that's lovely. I like that. So we're just getting that cluster coming together. And we're kind of just working a middle value of blue. We haven't gotten into our big, our light blue, our darkest blue. Put this one here. And I'm going to let this petal have a little bit of a divot in it. Now, if I ever need to go back and reshape a petal, I can come back with my green and change its shape. That's never really that big of a problem for me. Or for you. A lot of that is just about knowing when your paint needs to be dry. Just knowing when your paint needs to be dry. And I would say actually in your acrylic painting, that's half the battle, right? Is knowing, does my paint need to be wet or does my paint need to be dry? There we go. So just keep going. A little bit of our ultramarine blue, phthalo blue combo, some titanium white. We're doing great. How are you doing, John?
Good.
Good, good?
Yeah.
Good.
I'm sipping my coffee.
Sippy. Got a sippy your coffee. to get these weird little flowers that are, tucked in. It's always sort of fun. I will sometimes make a decision to just to keep them sort of separate of each other, paint them a slightly different lightness or darkness, just so I can tell them apart. I think it's helpful.
Some
little
differences.
Little differences. I'm painting this one in. Still kind of a star shape. If you like painting flowers, we did 30 floral paintings for Acrylic April this past year.
There's a couple in there.
There were a few. We enjoyed the journey of it. I'm going to add a little more petal to that petal, if you know what I mean. Little petal to the petal. Not to the metal, but to the petal.
To the canvas.
To the canvas, shall we say. I'm going to put a nice one right here. These little guys, they grow in little clusters. They're like lots of little flowers make up a big flower community.
Natural clumpers.
They're clumpers. You got to clump your flowers. So important to do. Don't forget to clump your flowers. Sometimes those petals turn. You gotta think about their turning. And maybe do a light one back here. Kind of here, but maybe a little out of focus, a little softer. So that's again a little bit more dry brushy. I'm just layering them in at this point now that I'm seeing them. These are just little distant ones. And then I, might come in and maybe a little focal one here. Kind of a little darker on the blue there. Might also kind of up the scale. Kind of widen out that petal.
Yeah.
I think that kind of gets those blues in, and let's get into our pinks and purples, as you do. Let's put a little, these are little spiral strokes, and we'll sort of define that little bud there. And I like to just tuck bits of that purple here and there. Just because those are kind of tucked in with that. All right, let's call that a step. That was a lot to do. We did a lot. When we come back, I'm going to show you what's next. If you have a lot of wet flowers, you're definitely going to want to dry it, but probably given the amount of time it takes to lay the initials in, it's all pretty dry. So I will leave that up to you at home to be like, do I have a lot of dry space to work, or is everything wet? If it's wet, you're going to want to hit it with a hairdryer. Come back and show you the next step. So we've got the beginnings of some flowers sort of thought about here, and we're definitely going to want to start to create the definition that shows you what direction the flowers are facing and also how their centers are. And one thing that I might do is start to put in their faces, and once I know where their faces are, I know how the petals will shade and how they will lay out in perspective. I'm going to take a little bit of, this is a number 4 round. It's a Simply Simmons round. It could be any round. It's synthetic. It's for acrylic. I'm going to get a little bit of white and yellow together. This is just a little starting space to go, right? Get a little green into that. I just want to, the beginnings of a color. So if I were to come here, and I were to say this petal was facing more that direction, right? I would put a little bit of that in there. Maybe a little more yellow. Just going here a little bit. A little bit right here. A little bit, little bit. Maybe face this one a little bit this way. See, it's just kind of ellipsing it. I'm just letting me know, mentally, me and you, where these are. Just the beginning of a little yellow. Just little yellow centers. A little bit here. Ooh, let's put a little bit right there. And one of the things to think about is if you're noticing how where you place those yellow centers, just, and we're being super loose about this right now, we're not being super specific, helps you understand how those flowers are facing. Once I have that kind of worked out, I don't want to do more detail there. I'm going to want to come in and get a little of my white, and I'm going to add it to my blue mix. And this is almost a value study from this point out once the yellows are in. How about I let them get the yellows in as a very short micro step?
Okay.
And come back and do another step, and I'll show them how to hit the highlights. So still with my number 4 round, we're going to get into that light blue color we just made. And just a reminder, just in case you're coming now, phthalo blue, ultramarine blue, a little titanium white. And we're going to start to give these petals definition and shape. I am curving my brush stroke a little bit, as you can see. That's also helping inform the petal shape. I can get a little more blue, put in there, and I'm really going to just kind of work these little petals out. Maybe a little more ultramarine blue there. And back into the white. And just up and down how light or dark the flower might be. Kind of coming in and making these definitions.
Just a little bit at a time.
A little bit at a time. Curving in. You can see I'm allowing the brush to sort of open up and let it start to create and shape out the flower a bit. Now maybe a little bit right here. This is also allowing us to sort of lighten the overall blue of the flower because these aren't really dark blue flowers. And that's an important thing to think about, is that they're not dark blue flowers. Well, let's make sure this one is out here. These are a lighter blue flower. They can have dark blue or hints of purple on them, but for the most part, they're very light blue. Makes them kind of fun to paint, I feel. So I'm kind of curving that one in. That's fun to do. And the way I layer them can help help show what petals on top. Can add a little bit of a highlight right there. Lighter. And which ones are behind. I just work between my blues. So if you like doing like pencil sketching or grayscale, if that's fun for you, this is sort of an entry into that because it's, you know, blue on blue with value. And we just go around continuing to create these little definitions. Not that hard for us, actually.
No, they all just kind of develop together.
Sometimes with things, it's just a little bit of just a little bit of process. I come back there with a little bit of blue, and you can see I can fold that little petal over a little bit. That's all we've got to do. Curling that in. Definitely work some stuff here. This is quite light out here, so I don't mind if it's a lighter blue. This one's a bit a turned one, so I'm going to have a little darker little outside, create little shadows. It's fun to see how, right? Got their blue and blue. It's fun to see how these flowers, you know, find their way in their community. And we have communities, right? Where we find our way.
Oh, yeah.
You know, just like these flowers. Trying to find our people, our community. Times like these, it can be so important to have community. You know, any time in history, really, but community really helps because they can give us strength when we're having trouble finding our own strength. So these little wonderful flowers find strength together. And that's what makes them sort of fun. Maybe a little darker in the blue over this one. You don't necessarily see the far version of it. A little blue and blue. A little blue and blue. Finding our little blue and blue. Brush stroking down. Notice that the curve of the stroke helps define the shape of the petal. If I curve it to the right or left, it helps pull that petal shape together. And it's not about each individual perfect flower, it's about the flowers as a whole. You know, they don't have to do anything. I just recently shared a video that I really liked about how in nature, you know, things don't work extra hard to belong there. You know, this petal doesn't have to be perfect enough to belong with this other petal. Going to dry brush a little bit here too. Now we're just dry brushing some little flowers there. Just some little thoughts, creating some value. I can come into my little purple pink space, right? Get a little white into that. This one is quite curved. Interesting to paint how the petal is there. And it's also curved right here, curved in. Maybe a little more pink. Some white. That's fun how we get those little pops of color here.
I like those purple.
Just a little bit twirled there. Just a little pop of purple to twirl. Maybe a little pop of purple here and there. Put that color. Where else can we put this, right? Go down here a little bit. Little loosely. It does help us feel like there's something happening. Maybe a little more magenta. I think that's quite a lot to get done, right? We've done quite a lot. When we come back, we shall continue on. It'll be fun. Now we're going to really play with color. We're going to use our filbert. It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's get our phthalo blue. Such a wonderful color. I'm kind of loaded up. And I'm going to create a couple places where I may use it to form shape and differentials between these petals. These are the shadows. Kind of a localized color and shadow. Now I know I'm going to be coming back here with some fun white detailing. But pulling this out on the blue, it will later be just really, I think, special. You know, and now we can start thinking about each flower as itself. I'm going to pull in here. Really kind of curve that shadow there. And you can kind of see how that pulls that little petal there. So this works really just everywhere. Just in the phthalo blue. And even creating some shading in these like little low flowers. We'll like that. We'll be glad for that. How you doing? You good, babe?
Yeah, yeah. I like the lot of little flowers on this one. I like all of them. Kind of.
Just working them out, getting little differentials.
I've been kind of quiet because it's a little rainy outside, and my microphone can pick up the rain.
Oh yeah, and well, we've got a full house too. It's a full house of bustling, busy people. So you might hear a little of the bustle, the hustle and the bustle, and that's okay. Just adding little centers to those. You can see it does. The localized color casts a great shadow and creates wonderful curve, and we, through value, start really shaping out our individual flowers. I'm getting my brush a little bit wet. It was getting a little bit dry. Loading back up with a little phthalo blue. And the nice thing about phthalo blue being, in this case, such a transparent color is that it really allows us to play here. And it can be just a nice, quiet painting time. The rain really is relaxing, isn't it?
It is.
That's super relaxing. I'm rather enjoying that now. I'm going to get really into my white, quite light. Come on the edge of these. Maybe add some little white edges. Very light though. Very light. I want it to be, much lighter blue than I've used before, but still blue. Pull in. See, I can use the edge of the brush to even help define these little petal patterns. So, this is just the start of thinking about how do we paint florals?
Mm-hmm.
Not the easiest flower lesson that I have, but certainly not the hardest. And really, the difficulty in the lessons is just about the amount of layered skills and techniques that you have to use to complete them. All these things in and of themselves, individually, really aren't that challenging. It's just how they go together in this little dance that is the flower. And now they're starting to pull, away from each other. Really like that there. It has a bit more twist to it. I love when they twist and twirl. Adding a little bit here. It's fun. Look, we got a nice little twirl going there. Kind of curving now. Quite lovely, isn't it?
That's mostly in the brush stroke.
That is a lot in the brushstroke.
The directionality of those seems to make a lot of difference.
Huge amount of difference. And again, the technique itself, not that overwhelming in any way. Right? Not an overwhelming technique. But it could be overwhelming if you didn't know how these techniques layered together. And that's why I like these real-time step-by-step lessons. Because if you can break them down into these little micro manageable bits, well, you can kind of do anything. If I feel like I got a little light on a petal, I just go right back, don't I? And I can come right back into my blue and watch that, just push that right back out. See how it just gets better and richer?
Yeah.
It's better and richer. Better and richer. There we go. Just putting little flowers out. Everything is all good. You're all good. You're doing great. Take a deep breath with me.
I love all these.
It's easy in these moments to get highly focused on the technique, the brushstroke, the color mix, and to get wound up into it, especially if you're new in art, because it feels like everything has a pass or fail kind of component to it. I mixed the color correctly. I mixed the color incorrectly. I got the value perfect. I got the value imperfectly. But art isn't like that. It's more like a dance of techniques and things that come together. And when it's all taken in its entirety, that's where it is. So yours doesn't have to be exactly like mine. Your every brushstroke doesn't have to be exactly like mine. You're learning how to play these things in symphony with each other. Even when I'm painting, I don't think to myself, the every brushstroke is perfect. I look more like, how are all the brushstrokes, I'm going to add a little blue there, working together? Right? Do they play well together? Does that make sense, John?
Yeah, totally does.
Sometimes I'm like, I feel very philosophical because painting makes me quite philosophical.
It's an introspective activity.
It is. I don't generally just talk into the ether when I'm painting on my own, but I am thinking quite a lot when I'm painting on my own. See, even here I might kind of dry brush, right? A little bit of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And the more focal flowers, just to help these feel perhaps like good cousins in technique. Might even put a little bit right there on that twist. Doesn't that look nice? Like to kiss things here and there. Kiss the painting. Not with our mouths, because paint is not good in our bodies.
No.
The only colored thick thing you should put in your body is frosting or vegetables or something. I don't know. But not paint. Paint is not edible and you shouldn't eat it. I'm going to continue on through here because I think I'm making real headway today. Ah, it's looking lovely. Just a few layers of this. And then we get a nice little happy floral painting. All right. Wow, we're taking in a lot, aren't we?
Really are.
I rinsed out because sometimes when I'm painting, I'll notice that, oh my, something about the paint, it's not flowing off my brush the way I'd want. Just coming on the edge here. And so I will reset the brush, which is to get it wet again and, kind of pull it in. Now, I still feel like there's another layer here that we can do, but this was a lot to take in. This is a lot to focus on.
Yeah, there's a
lot of big things, but I want to put some little pops of pink and some other things before I put in the yellow centers and the white detailing and even any white lining. You know, we've still got stems to put in. We still got little things to dance with. So like, let's look at this, take this in, you know, look at your step by step, and then come back and I'm going to show you the next part of the painting. Now in here, I think I want to get some little fun pink and purple bits. So I'm going to take my quinacridone magenta. Gosh, I love this color. Grab a little bit of white, as you do. And I'm going to find a few places to kind of add a little hint of that. Not everywhere, it's just fun.
just an accent.
Well, this particular flower can have little hints of this color. I guess things aren't really blue as much as they're a type of purple is what I've read. But I don't know that's true. If you're into planting and you would love to share in the comments where the color blue comes from in nature, besides you know, the science of how we see color, about what light rays reflect back. I mean, like, how does nature express this? What colors does it use to give us this idea that we're looking at a blue? I think I want that to be much lighter. So sometimes I'll come in and I'll do a thing and I'll be like, oh, you could be much lighter. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll be like, here, you be lighter. And you can see every time I do this, this pulls little elements of each thing from the other. Little pinks here and there. These aren't strong. These are little kisses of color. Gotta kiss the color around. Kind of rinse that off in there and sort of take that all in. I think I might get back into my blue and a lot of white, as you do. This time I went a little stronger in my ultramarine blue.
Yeah.
And I'm just letting each petal tell me where to go. A little more ultramarine blue there. So ultramarine blue is more biased to a red than phthalo blue, which is more biased to really a green or a yellow.
When you mean biased, you mean like it has more of that red in it?
It has a little hint of it. You know, like sometimes something has a little hint of Hatch chili pepper.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's a little hint. Could have a little hint of sugar. Things have a little hints of things. And so that's sort of important to be thinking about. I'm going to get back into my phthalo blue here. Back into that. That was just not playing quite right for me. And that'll happen. I'll look at something and I'm like, you're not playing quite right for me. I don't really love where you're going with that color. Just dancing it around. Just dancing around. Oh, this is a chill day. I wonder
And
if I'm overly chill today. Am I
well,
overly chill today?
well, I was just about to ask you. So when you're dancing around, does that? I would translate that to a new viewer that you're spreading the colors around so that they're all over the canvas.
Yes, I can. That's a very good explanation of that. Thank you, sweetheart.
And that's because when you uniformly, well, I wouldn't say uniformly, but when you scatter the colors that you're mixing out throughout the painting, then it makes it look more uh, cohesive.
I think that's a good way of seeing it. It's cohesive. I think definitely cohesive. Now I'm going to add a smidge of yellow to that blue mix. See how it kind of went almost into a turquoise? Just really kind of trying to play with those edges. And that's right. Where else can I put this color? Right, where else should it be? I want to put it everywhere, but sometimes I want to just pull a petal here or there forward. And by lightening a value or changing a hue, sometimes I can make something feel like it's more focal to us, the viewer. You know, little things like adding detail, adding greater contrast. Those can make things feel a little more considered. All right, now let's get into the center of these beauties and some stems, I think. What do you think? Next up when we come back?
Yeah.
More details to pull all these little forget-me-nots, because you don't want to forget me, together. So I've got my number 4 round back, and I'm going to come get it wet, and I'm going to go back to my original color, my burnt sienna and my phthalo green, and I'm going to do something kind of maybe shocking. I'm going to add a little black into that, because I want that green, but I needed just a value darker than everything that was around it. And I'm going to add some deep stems.
Deep stems.
Yes, deep stems.
Not the shallow ones.
We don't want shallow stems. Shallow stems cannot help us.
If I control my zoomer, it's all like
just these little details can be important when you're trying to say that this is a community. Stems are what holds it together, right? It doesn't take too many. And sometimes I might come down here and add a little bit of that dark green here and there. Just kind of even pulling out values, right? Because it also makes a nice little delineation. When you have those little stems in, and they just need to be a hint, you don't need to really see them like completely or totally or anything like that. I'm going to take a little of my cad yellow and my cad red, and I'm going to mix together, believe it or not, a bit of an orange. And I might even gray that orange. a bit with that color there. So that'll be my kind of brown in the center of all of it.
Ah, so you made an orange and then kind of browned it.
And then we'll come add highlights. And I'm making little dots, sort of, they're like little bumpets. You won't really see the bumpets until we add the details of the bumpets. But sometimes you just have to have the value to see the form. Just putting these in.
Little flower highlight centerpieces.
Yeah, I might add just a hint to some of that here. I don't want a lot of it, but I just want to say, oh, hey, I saw it here too.
Mm-hmm.
Right, I saw it first. No. Not just that you saw it first, but that, you see it in there. I'm going to take a little bit of that orange and brown green together. Maybe even get a little more, get some centers going that are darker. Going to add some shading under.
Creates the dimensionality for them.
They need it. I want to make sure that they have it. They need it. They have to have it. Sometimes I'll come into my green brown and even get deeper than that if I need to. The exaggeration won't harm me. You don't want to exaggerate in life. Right? It's okay to exaggerate in your art. In life, tell the truth. In art, tell the story of what we all wish the truth was. Right?
Right.
Back it used to be like you wanted to tell the truth in art because that's how we recorded everything. But now we have cameras, so.
As the fictional character Chaucer once said, to give truth scope.
Exactly. Now you'll notice that I, sort of change where my shadow is based on the lighting. And that's just a little thing I've got to, have going on. I've got this sort of green-brown color, right? Maybe get a little yellow into it. Put a little ultramarine blue to it. What a strange thing, yeah? Going to add white.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll start with adding these little white veins. This is sort of the gray of it. And I will be coming back with just deep highlights. But I want the contrast.
Mm-hmm.
So this gives me something to contrast against. I'll be coming back with quite a detailed brush. And that will let me get the little bits of details that I want on these flowers to make them feel like they're more detailed than they are. I think they'll still be a little impressionistic, but they'll have enough anchoring detail to really read to us as forget-me-nots.
Yeah.
Again, this is just a little floral painting to remind you we teach acrylic.
And it's so cute. It's little flowers.
Now, one of the things that's going to be different between my painting and your painting at home is that I don't get anxious over every brushstroke, and you might feel anxious over every brushstroke. But I kind of have the experience to know, it's about getting the total thing in done, not everything done perfectly.
Right.
We've got a teapot, copper teapot with daisies that's like the perfect lesson for that.
This really did come together as a nice little painting.
You know, sometimes I make just these little like sketches just to say that that's out of there. All right, now when we come back, we need a much more detailed brush. I'm going to get a brush called a liner. So you just want to get your most pointed detail brush, and I'll show you the highlighting bits that finish this particular painting off. So I'm going to frost and finish this painting with a brush. This is a #1 liner. This is the Princeton Select liner. I'm very happy with them. I use them pretty consistently. I'm going to bring some of my yellow over towards my white. And I'm going to get a little white on here. And what I'm going to start doing is creating some brighter and lighter spaces in my flowers. So let's pick some. I think this is going to be a very bright yellow. Just putting that pop. Isn't that a pop, pop, pop?
Oh, yeah. That's very pop pop.
Sometimes it can be more yellow. Sometimes it will be more white, and that is okay. You can see I'm just touching those in. I might make that one a little more yellow. I'm trying to make sure that you're seeing that these are structurally shaped. That's what I'm worried about, is that you're catching that they're structurally shaped. And I like the detailing. I'm going to get a little more white into there. You can see I'm doing the roll and load. Because in that, then suddenly we're like, oh, we really see those, don't we? We're really feeling that. I might even come if like I have a lighter highlight and even highlight a highlight. See how we did there? Just look at them pop. So crazy.
Really is.
So much fun, so delightful. Just my favorite part of a long project. Coming to the end and getting to do the fun bits. Getting them fun bits done. Maybe a little more yellow on the far side and a little whiter on one side. You can do that too. You can be like, oh, that's just delightful. Little sketchy. Not a lot, just a little hint of a detail, right? Just a little thought. Now I'm going to get a lot more white. I could definitely get into a liquid white if I needed to, but I feel like I'm still pretty good on what I have. Gonna add those little white spirals out. might get a little blue into it. I still need it to be just light, light, light though. There we go.
Those look really good.
They're just these little flowers have them. They're like morning glories kind of have this sometimes too. Sort of like interesting little centers. You can see why I put kind of a little gray underneath it. So it's there. Something for the light color to stand up on. And it's okay too, by the way, to add some of that light color into this. See how we're doing? Creating some cool dimensionality. Went and got some of my other color there too. Just putting those in, maybe a little more dry brushy down here. Kind of pushes that back, doesn't it? It's there. Putting those little bits in. A little bit over here. Let those go. When we get back from that, we really see those flowers.
You really do. They really come together.
I hope this painting definitely brings good energy into your life. You know, maybe brings people together who've lost track, right? Through COVID and everything. Maybe it creates the energy of being reunited in your life. So it's super fun, isn't it? Just a little fun painting. Not the most detailed painting we've ever had to do, but it still brings us a lot of joy. Still brings us a lot of enjoyment. I'm bringing a little bit of my light color over here to my gray because this flower is just a little bit more in shadow. So it still has those light centers. They're just not as wah like this one here.
Yeah. All those little contrast lines really help make them pop together.
Little moments. Maybe add a little bit of that grayed outline here to these little petals. Those kind of pull in some dimensionality. Rinse out a little bit. Get a little bit of my white with some water. Just a little bit here, maybe.
Wow, that lining really, really brings it together.
You don't want it everywhere. Well, I guess you could do it everywhere. Everywhere doesn't hurt you. It's just a little bit of saying, oh, hey, did you notice we could see
That's really cool.
the frill of that, the twirl of that petal, the turn of that flower. I like doing these little bits at the end. One thing that you might notice if you're paying attention is I'm not trying to create a very heavy solid line. I am creating a little bit of an edge for sure.
Got a little broken edge where it's like reflecting little bits of the
thing. Yeah, like a little light caught it.
Yeah.
Because petals have these little kind of personality. Sometimes I like to get different kind of grayed out colors into the thinned white. And that's because even in this, kind of a little bit, everything is not the same. We turn that little petal there a bit.
A
bit. We just want to turn it a bit. Turn that one just a bit. It's a light touch. See how we can curl those little petals down? Mm-hmm. It's just lovely. Just a light little touch. Here, kind of there. Sometimes I like to collapse the little flowers or fold them over. Oh, gotta get a little more water in there. If you find you're having trouble, getting the line you want, it's just probably that you have too much thickness in there. And notice out here I get a little sketchier. It's a little looser. It's okay to be a little sketchier. Oh, goodness. Isn't this just a lovely day?
It really is nice.
All right. I feel like this is just a fun little floral. Sometimes forget-me-nots can feel challenging because they have so much complexity and so much personality. But anything, and this painting, any painting, none of the techniques themselves are particularly too much, I don't think. I think it's just about knowing how they work together. So sometimes it's nice to add a little signature to the painting. Some people are into signing, some people are not. I like to sign, but I do try to sign in a color that is elsewhere in the painting and isn't going to pull the eye. If you imagine I used my CAD red to sign down here, that's really all you'd see. So that's why I sign in a nice green yellow. So guys, that was amazing. I love spending the day with you. John, did you love this? We have missed you so much.
Really nice, yeah.
We have missed you so much. If you followed about us relocating, you know that we've got a lot of craziness going on in our lives. And then that video definitely created a dominoes of very important information for us, which, changed our plans a little bit, which means we get to bring you fun videos like this. So what's next? Make sure that you've hit that subscribe button. Definitely leave me comments about things you want to paint, questions you have about art. Those things help me be a better art teacher. If you want to share your painting, go by Facebook. I've got a group. Art Sherpa Official, super friendly place. You can share this painting there. And even if it's the first time you painted and you've done this painting with me, people are going to be there for you because guess what? They had their first painting once too.
Mm-hmm.
They totally know what that's like. And I love that group for that because it's so encouraging. It's so helpful. You can also share with me on all the places that there are social media. I release little tiny micro videos here and there with fun stuff and tips. So follow me in all the places. But the most important thing is that you make a little time for yourself and be creative. I am going to be back
Mm.
soon.
Very well. We're going to be recording again in the morning, I think.
Yes, we're going to be recording while we have the stability to record. So we're going to be recording, and you will see those scheduled out on the channel. And I think I'll also make events with them on Facebook to make them findable. And you'll see them on the calendar on the website, theartsherpa.com.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where you'll be able to find things. I'm also going to start sending out newsletters. So you guys, since we're in such a weird space, right?
Yep.
That you guys can know what's going on. I want to thank all of our patrons. Without your support and help, we couldn't have tested this stuff. We couldn't have figured this out. So as always, thank you to guys so much. I want you to be good to yourselves, be good to each other, and I'll see you at an easel really soon. Bye-bye.